Good evening and welcome to the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. It is Monday, March 13th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Would all rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Everybody has the packet in front of them. Are there any corrections or revisions to the agenda as distributed? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All those in favor of approving the agenda as distributed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Moving on to the minutes. The minutes are before us on pages 6 through 8 of the packet. Are there any revisions or corrections to the agenda? Or, the minutes. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes as distributed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Next up, we have a public hearing tonight. The instructions for the public hearing are printed on page 9 of the packet, and we'll begin with the staff presentation, and we have Ben Baker here. Oh, yes, we're going to open that at 7:02 p.m.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Public hearing notice was posted and sent out to everybody within 350 feet of the subject property. Tonight we're talking about Windsor Pond 5th edition. It'll be three things. It'll be the final plat, the preliminary plat, and the development agreement. So Windsor Pond is a 30-acre single-family residential neighborhood, and that was developed just to the east of County Road 20 and just south of Traverse Road. It has developed since 2002. In your staff report, it shows the 4 different additions that have come, the phases that have come over since 2002, with the lots and the lot size ranges. In the beginning, the lots were a little narrower and the houses were a little tighter. And then as the last 2 phases went on, the lots have become just a little bit bigger as the market has dictated. Valley View Land Company was the original developer of the first 2 phases. Then Mike Volk with Windsor Homes has since constructed the last 2 phases, and now he has applied for the final phase, which would be phase 5. This is currently Outlot A of the 4th edition, which is 3.2 acres, and what's proposed is 10 single-family residential patio homes. These are slab and grade homes with no basements, similar to the rest of the neighborhood in Windsor Pond. The plat, it has been reviewed by city staff, the city engineer, and the public works. There's adequate utilities as far as electric, sewer, water, and traffic has also been reviewed as well. The plat and construction plans show that Windsor Lane will be extended between Traverse Road and Victoria Street. This links the current gap of 450 feet, as you can see in your packet and up on the screen. So on page 26 and 27 is the preliminary plat. There's both an aerial photo preliminary plat and then a regular preliminary plat that shows existing conditions and the proposed lots. And then on page 36 is the final plat, which shows the dimensions of the lots and the lot numbers in the blocks. So that would conclude staff's report, and I'll be back later.
Yes. Are we expecting a presentation from the applicant tonight?
It's certainly up to the applicant if they want. Sometimes we have them have a presentation, sometimes they don't. In the past, for improvements under this developer, he hasn't chosen to spoke, but that's perfectly cool as well.
Absolutely. All right, assuming no applicant's presentation, we will move on to the public comment period. Any member of the public who'd like to address the council as a part of this hearing can do so. You would just need to provide your name and your address. Does not seem that we have a member of the public wanting to address us tonight, so we are going to close the hearing at 7:05 p.m. and this will come up later on our agenda under new business. Let's see, we are gonna move along to visitors' comment. We have time on our agenda. Any member of the audience who'd like to address the council on any agenda item may do so at this time. Hearing none, if there's a member of the audience who'd like to address the council on any matter whatsoever, now would be the time on our agenda to do so. Hearing nobody, we will move on to approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda again begins with a memo on page 10 of the packet and concludes with the resolution on page 22. The resolution on the consent agenda includes the following employee appointments at the wages indicated. You'll see the list within the packet for with positions for Scott Lee, Garrett Domross, Parker Domross, Frank Drzinski, Josie Wybush, Jim Seward, Tom Tepley, Dale Thorson, and Sam Mendoza. Once again, the position and hourly rates are printed in the packet, and the schedule of disbursements for February 23rd, 2023 through March 8th, 2023. Are there any questions or discussion about the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the resolution on page 22 of the packet?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston?
Aye.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye. The resolution is approved. We have no unfinished business before us tonight, so we will move on to new business. The first item of new business is the adoption of resolutions approving the preliminary and final plats of Windsor Pond 5th Edition and authorizing execution of a development agreement. And Ben is back to speak with us.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. So for the first approval tonight would be for the preliminary plat. And that preliminary plat resolution is on page 28. And that references, you should each got an 11 by 17 copy of the aerial photo. The preliminary plat shows how the lots are going to lay out with the existing conditions. It shows where Victoria Street and Windsor Lane currently end, and Traverse Road currently ends in that gap in between. So the Planning Commission did look at this in early March, and they did recommend approval of the preliminary plat. So it would be staff's and the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the resolution on page 28.
Any questions for Ben or Todd? Anything to add? All right. Brad?
I was just gonna say, one thing we talked about, the planning commission brought up was the fact that we may gain some new residents to St. Peter. If it's another older couple that moves into these who's a current resident, it may free up housing for a younger family to move into town, which is something we're looking for as well, so.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, the resolution on page 28 is called for adopting Windsor Pond 5th Edition preliminary plat. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bruflat?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston?
Aye.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. The next resolution on page, beginning on page 29, is for the development agreement for Windsor Pond 5th Edition. Do you have anything to add, Ben?
Just on the development agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, as this is city's practice with the final plat, and we do like to have a development agreement that addresses a few things. And on the page 24, it shows the legal fee reimbursement, the parkland dedication, and regional stormwater improvements. And along with other things, we like to have some language in there that requires the physical development of the subdivision be reviewed as well. So that's kind of a highlight of the development agreement, and that goes along with the Windsor Pond 5th Edition final plat, which is on page 36 and the resolution on 37.
Are there any questions about the development agreement? no questions about the development agreement, we're going to move on to the resolution, which is on page 37 of the packet, authorizing Windsor Pond 5th Edition final plat and authorizing execution of the development agreement. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sherstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember Reyna,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflack.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We will move on to adoption of a resolution approving a revolving loan application submitted by YCDHT Inc.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. YCDHT is You Can Do Hard Things. Is a real estate investment and property management company, and they own the property at 217 West Park Row, and that was since September of 2020. The property contains actually two buildings, 217 and 219, which are combined. Christine Montana Rasmussen is the business owner, head chef and baker of River Rock Kitchen and Bakery Company, which is the cornerstone tenant of the property. Along with the bakery, the building also hosts 4 other renters. YCDHT is planning improvements to the building in 2023 to ensure that it has a long life. In order to keep this building in good condition, the following updates to the building are planned for this year. And you can see the 5 different bullet points there in the staff report. The major one would be tuck pointing work, and that would be on as needed around both buildings. There'll be new windows along the alley, up on the upper level, 3 there, and then some in the back. And there'll also be 2 new doors and ADA ramps that will be coming off the back. YCDHT has applied for a CBD renovation accessibility enhancement loan. They're eligible to do that because it's located in the central business district. They've requested a $21,960 loan, which is 90% of the total cost of the project, with a balance of $2,440, which is 10%. The city's loan program was created to promote reinvestment in properties within the central business district and the historic district, and specifically to fund exterior historic enhancements and handicap accessibility improvements, both of which this project will accomplish. If approved, the loan would amortize over 10 years at 0% with payments of $183. However, if the loan payments are made as due and on time, there is a forgiveness. So once there's a balance of $5,000, that last $5,000 goes away if all the payments are made on time. You can see that YCDHT does currently have 2 loans with the city and the EDA. And this particular project has been reviewed 3 times by the EDA Loan Review Subcommittee, by the EDA, who recommended approval on March 3rd of the loan request, and then also by the HPC, because it's in the historic district. They also recommended approval of this project. So with that, it would be staff's recommendation and the recommendation of these 3 boards to make the approval of this loan.
Thank you very much. Questions for Ben? Carrie?
I guess a question, and then I also have a comment. So, in the past, as a council, we've talked about the challenges in the historic district and finding contractors that can do tuck pointing. So if other businesses in the district are interested in taking care of their building, as you know, these property owners are, they could also apply for this loan
Correct, yes.
as well. They'd be eligible. And then a while back, Todd, we had discussed perhaps coordinating some effort or attracting a contractor to maybe do a lot of work in our area in one kind of full swoop. Has that gone anywhere, those efforts?
Yeah, we had focused on tuck pointing, but I'll let Ben talk about that. He's worked on that already, and so there's some movement forward with that.
I have reached out to a few contractors. There's one that's gotten back to me and is interested. What we're planning on doing is sending out letters this late winter, early spring to the businesses, just gauging interest, and then trying to be a conduit or connect those businesses with that contractor to see if we can get somebody to come in to do not just one little job that they may not come in for, but if there was 5 jobs or 7 jobs, maybe that would entice this business or businesses to work with the downtown businesses to get some tuck pointing work done.
Tuck pointing seems to have been a particular challenge in finding folks that have the skill set to be able to do that, and the amount of need varies substantially from building to building. So again, the theory is that trying to aggregate that and assisting some of the businesses might be beneficial to everyone, so that's the process going forward.
Sounds great. And then I said this in the EDA meeting, but just wanted to thank YCDHT for taking care of the building in the historic district. These are really special buildings in St. Peter with a lot of history. And so I'm glad that we have a program like this to entice those property owners to invest in their building, but then, for the property owners to take that step to apply. I appreciate that. So thank you to YCDHT. I'll get that one day. You can do hard things for taking care of the building.
Emily?
I would echo Councilor Johnson's sentiment there and just add that I'm really happy to see that they're doing the ADA ramp and door project, just furthering our commitment to accessibility around our community. I think that's really great to see.
Thanks. Any further questions or discussion on this agenda item? Let's see. The resolution approving Central Business District renovation/accessibility enhancement loan to YCDHT LLC to partially finance exterior improvements and ADA access at 217 and 219 West Park Row is on page 41 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Rand,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Brundtland,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherristrom.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Moving along to adoption of a resolution approving the 2023 Accessibility Improvement Grant Program.
Thank you, Mayor Noel and members of the council. Back in 2020, the EDA recommended the city council that they'd adopt guidelines for the CBD ADA Accessibility Improvement Grant Program. This program was originally developed to incentivize renovations or alterations to downtown properties that enhance the accessibility for those with mobility impairments. Under the terms of the loan, the city finances improvements in the form of a forgivable loan, which would be at 0% interest rate, and forgiven each year over 15 years. On your staff report shows over the last 3 years, as far as what applicants the EDA and city has received for this project, and then which ones were funded. So in 2020, there was 3 applicants and 3 awardees, and in 2021, we had 9 applicants with 5 applicants funded. And then last year, 12 applicants and then 5 funded. And just to note that in 2020 and 2021, those were just for the downtown central business district, and then 2022 it expanded to be all businesses within the city. And I should note that on the bottom of page 43, St. Peter Eye Care Center just contacted me today, and they have now since put theirs in. So we have everybody from last year now is done. Applicants whose projects were not funded in these previous years will have the opportunity to reapply. And given the success of the program over these last 3 years, the EDA did recommend approval in early March that we do this project again. As far as the fiscal impact, and checking with with Sally, we have about $55,000 available due to the And I know the EDA had asked, it's gone up a little bit from before, and that was due to interest rates and how some of our money has been working for us over the last year, so.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Brad?
Thanks, Ben, for getting that answer so quickly from Sally. Basically, the interest, it's not the interest on loans, but it's actually the interest sit on the bank deposits for the revolving loan fund for the unused funds. Basically, with interest rates going up, we're finally actually getting something. I was very happy. Although we were all very surprised to see that $55,000 number. I think last year I had been pushing I think there's about 35,000, and I had been encouraging going beyond that. I think at this point we should be able to fund multiple projects at this level. I know John Kwame put this forward along with Stephen Graham's, that their encouragement, and I think it's something that we should be proud of and that we should continue to move forward with.
Also, just in case folks are wondering, because this came up at the EDA meeting too, some of the projects last year, for instance, the eye care center, it took a while for those, after the grant was the funds were awarded, it took a while because of contractor availability and supply chain issues, and so it's not that they were holding on to those funds unnecessarily. There were reasons why those projects took a while, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
If I can, really from a practical standpoint, we do not provide the loan or the funds until they complete the project. And so
Oh,
they have to
that's right.
demonstrate that they've
Mhm.
expended those dollars first. And in addition, and certainly this is something that could change in the future, but the original concept and the concept that you continue to see carried through for this year is that, as Councilmember DeVos indicated, this is kind of indexed, or we utilize the interest from those revolving loan funds, and that's been the budget for this. So certainly this could change in the future. And in one of the years, you actually spent more than the budget because you had some really good projects and how the subcommittee reviewed those projects. But it's wonderful to be able to provide this kind of resource for your businesses in the community. Just as a point of information, more than 10% of your population at any time is physically handicapped. And so being able to support them, and just as importantly, support the businesses that want to sell goods and products and all those things to them, is a wonderful thing that you're able to do, and very unique in Minnesota.
Absolutely. Carrie?
Thank you for clarifying that important point, Todd. I think now that you said that, the concern was that there were multiple applicants and some weren't awarded, and the concern from the EDA, just to clarify, was that these folks got awarded the opportunity and hadn't used it yet. So
Yeah.
what's great is that we continue to support the program as well as the EDA, and so it gives those businesses who didn't have the opportunity last year to apply, as well as other businesses who see what others are doing and hopefully get inspired. It's a great program, another great program that we have.
Thank you. If there's nothing further on this matter, the resolution authorizing commercial accessibility improvement grant program to finance building renovations to enhance accessibility for those with mobility impairments for calendar year 2023 is on page 45 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Rutland,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember Ram.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We will move on to adoption of resolution adopting updated assessment policy and establishing flat fees for such assessments. That begins with the memo on page 46, and there are two resolutions with this agenda item.
Madam Mayor, let me talk about those two resolutions just quick and then provide for a little bit of an explanation. The resolutions, one relates to approval of a new policy. And since the policy changes how funding or assessments are paid to a flat rate, and the discussion has been that this would be done as a part of your municipal fee schedule, the second resolution relates to setting those flat rates and adding those to your municipal fee schedule, which typically you review at the end of a year for the new year for approval for January. So this is inserting them into that moving forward. We've discussed this a number of different times, and there are a number of different reasons why you've looked at or evaluated potential new policy. We've talked about this from a number of different perspectives and angles, for sure. So I think this is well-covered territory, and been happy to assist the council in moving this forward. Certainly, some of the goals are, and some of the challenges that we face relate to the cost of infrastructure outpacing the value of housing within communities. That's one. The challenges that we have related to how the rules work relative to assessments and funding. So as an example, if we're going to issue debt for these types of improvements, a minimum of 20% must be assessed. So that's an important threshold because many of these projects you'll incur debt for going forward. At the top side of that, or the ceiling of that, is that under Minnesota Statute 429, which we've talked about a lot, really you can't assess more than the value of the property is going to go up. And so that creates a barrier when cost of infrastructure has outpaced the value of homes. So there's, for lack of a better term, kind of a sweet spot that you're trying to work within, not only to assist property owners, but to ensure that your community, other people who help pay for this, other ratepayers and taxpayers, are paying an appropriate amount towards the improvement within certain areas of your community as well. So this new policy is an effort to do that. We've talked about how to do this. We've talked about mechanisms related to doing it. We've talked about funding sources, and so let me just go through that just a little bit. The council has settled on, at least this is based on the discussions that you've had at your workshops, and this has evolved over time, but setting flat fees for things like the street assessment. And if you need a water service connection, the assessment for that. And if you need a sewer service connection, the assessment for that. We've also talked about how to categorize things like stormwater improvements and curb and gutter improvements and sidewalks. And the council's indicated very clearly that some of those you think should be carried by the community as a whole, whether through payment of taxes or through payment of rates. And so sidewalks is a great example that you had a wonderful discussion on, in saying that sidewalks are really important to the entire community. Therefore, the general fund should really pay for those as a part of any improvements or maintenance or repairs that may be done along these projects or in alongside these projects. So, again, in your packet includes a draft policy. This policy is much, much shorter than your previous policy. The goal there was to try to simplify, simplify, simplify. It's also made quite a little bit easier by having flat fees, rather than charging by the frontage foot or the square foot and all the rules that relate to that, and odd-shaped lots and all of those kind of things that have to be considered. So it becomes a shorter policy based on that. I'm happy to go through the entire policy, but essentially it does a couple of different things. One of which is it sets forth that there'll be a flat rate for assessment of streets. So when you have street projects that fall into the category of reconstruction and accessible, not seal coating, but reconstruction and accessible, we would anticipate a flat rate fee. What's anticipated in the second resolution is a $7,500 fee. Related to water and sewer. So if there is work that needs to go on to improve a private service line, any work that goes on in the right-of-way will be assessed at $1,500. And so those property owners that need a repair to their water service line would see an assessment of an additional $1,500. Any work that's outside of the right-of-way, so on private property, depending on what needs to be done, they would have to sign a waiver and agree to the assessment for whatever the charge is based on the bids that we receive. Wastewater would be handled in the same way. Sidewalks, trails, curb and gutter, those type of things aren't really contemplated in the assessment policy because they would be funded through other mechanisms, whether it's the general fund or fees in the case of stormwater. So again, another reason why the policy is simplified and therefore much shorter than it might normally be. Any improvements that are made in addition that folks might want. So as an example, once in a while we'll be doing work in the street and someone will say, well, I want my walk up to my front door improved. Well, they would have to sign a waiver, and we're willing to assess that, but they would have to sign a waiver agreeing to that price based on the bid prices that we receive as part of these projects going forward. So that's a great example of this. You'll also see a couple of areas in the policy that we provided for some additional clarification relative to one driveway, two driveways, and how that works. And I think we've done that appropriately, and I think that's considered and worded clearly. Not only are policies used by the council, but they're reviewed and used by staff, and certainly read by your community. So we want to make sure that we do the best that we can to ensure that everybody can have a common understanding. Doesn't always work out that way, but we try our best to make sure that people can do that. So with that, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to leave you to ask any questions. Mayor and Council, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer as best I can. Again, 2 resolutions. One is providing for the approval of the new policy. The second of which is setting those flat rates within your municipal fee schedule. Again, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Any questions or discussion? Brad?
So on page 52, so question on, so when setting the interest rate, it says the rate shall be, depend on the current market investment conditions or the cost of bond issuance plus 1%. Okay, so the second half of that cost of bond issuance plus 1% is very clear. Current market investment conditions is really vague as far as how, you know, how it would be decided as to, I mean, I would think we would want to put something in there such as prime rate or something like that. I guess my question is, I'm assuming that's in there for, in the event we don't actually bond a project.
Thank you. Yes, that's correct, sir.
And so at that point, how would you determine what the current market investment conditions are?
Your past practice has been to use the interest rate that represents the interest earned on a T-bill.
Okay.
And so if the council would wish, certainly we could modify that and indicate that as being a T-bill. That's been your practice. This is the same language that you've had within your policy previously.
And,
But-
okay, and if that's I would say that's just what I want to know. So you do have a typical policy of
Yes, we do.
following
We have
the
a
T-bill
practice
rate.
that we've used, yes.
And the problem is, of course, if, you know, silly as it sounds, if the T-bills go away or something, you'd have to find another one. So.
We'll have to find another thing to index it against, yeah.
Okay, so that's what, and that's what I thought that policy was for in the event we don't bond a project. So.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Then on the next one, under assessment period, well, just looking at it, these assessments from 500 to 2,500 over up to 5 years is fine, but then we jump from 2,501 to 10,000 is 10 years. Well, at 10,000, that's 4 times as much as the cap for the other one. You're looking at basically adding $1,000 a year plus interest. If we're say they're at like 9,500 or something. Most of the ones in this project are going to be probably over 10,000, but we're looking at putting this policy in place for future projects as well. My thought process would be to drop the assessments, to drop the cap on that third one, 10 years to 5,000, and then basically 5,001. Anything exceeding 5,000 would be at 15 years. I mean, we're bonding this for 15 years. I would say that would allow people with larger assessment, or with the assessments that push up to the 10,000 cap to press it out further. Like I say, 1,000 plus could be a big hit on people. Obviously, some of these assessments will get there anyways, but I wonder what other people think on that one. So you're looking at basically if you did the 10 years, capped it at $5,000, you'd be looking at basically $500 plus interest a year on the top end of the 10-year one. I'd just look at spreading the cost out for people. I dealt with this in Le Sueur on a rental property. We had an assessment of over $600 a year, and it's a lot to eat. It's like when you actually look at that, and that has to come out.
Any questions or discussion on this point? Carrie?
I guess pros and cons of that from your perspective, Todd. I think what we attempted to do in workshop is try to get this to the point where we were ready to approve it today. Is this something, Todd, do you think we should discuss further?
I don't know that you necessarily need to discuss it any further if you're supportive of that. This is, again, this is the language that you had previously. There's no magic set around these numbers. Just as a point of clarification, on these projects going forward, our goal is to target only 10 years of debt service, not necessarily 15, but it certainly could change over time. It really is a matter of how you want this to work. I'd also mention that folks, and probably like me, there is an opportunity in any given year to pay your assessment earlier, so you could pay it off earlier. What we're likely to find certainly is that there'll be a number of these properties, probably less than 20%, that will transfer hands in the interim over the course of that 10 years, and so they'll be paid off at that time. But whatever numbers you'd want to set in here isn't adverse to for the staff. If you wanted to make that change, that would be no problem.
Any discussion? Ben? Oh, okay. Brad?
The other thing I was gonna point out was, one of the things that when the community was coming in, they were talking about, you know, the size of, and obviously the assessments are coming down in size from what they were initially, but, you know, one of the, especially, one of the business owners pointed out, the assessment that'd be on her home is, this is on top of everything else, and so anything we can do to help this stretch out for people. In this particular project, most of the people are gonna be already in the 15-year bracket. I mean, if you're looking at 7,500 plus 1,500 each for water and sewer, you're already at 10,500. I'm just looking at maybe if we just have something that's just a street assessment, that might come in at 7,500. Those are the ones that those are the ones I'm looking at down the road as having an impact.
It's at the pleasure of the council.
Is there any discussion? Yeah.
I
Karen.
guess if, you know, Councilmember DeBoss, you're willing to throw out what you think are the tiers, could
Yep.
we then consider that?
Yeah, I can tell you, basically the tiers I would be looking at, tier 1 and 2 would be unchanged. Tier 3 would move to 2,501 to 5,000. And tier 4 would be assessments exceeding 5,000. So that would be the only change, basically, is what I'd be
Okay.
looking at.
So the appropriate way, if you wanted to go forward, was to move the resolution with amendment to the policy in that manner.
I'd be interested to hear what other people think. I mean, so.
Taking a look at the changes that we've made overall, I don't see this as a substantial change. And if it can help some of the properties out, I see nothing wrong with this.
Well, I would like to move the resolution with the amendment, changing line 3 to assessments from 2,501 to 5,000, and line 4, assessments exceeding 5,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
The motion before us is to approve the resolution, the revised resolution establishing an assessment policy for certain construction policies beginning on page 49 of the packet. We have a motion and a second, so I'll call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBoss,
Aye.
Councilmember Brewstadt,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherrod,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, we will discuss the resolution adopting modifications to the 2023 municipal fee schedule. That's on page 53 of the packet.
Mayor members, the only thing that I'd like to point out about this resolution is that the reason they all say X in front of them is because we will number them within the fee structure later.
To be determined.
Is there any discussion on this resolution? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBoss,
Aye.
Councilmember Brewstadt,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherrod,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Moving on, adoption of a resolution approving a tree worker license application.
Mayor and members, this is included in your packet, starting on page 54 with the resolution on page 55. This is an application, as you know. New applicants have a separate agenda item. Renewals are on consent agenda. This is a new one for Lawn Pro Lawn and Tree Service. We found nothing that would prohibit Lawn Pro or Mr. Horning from receiving a license.
Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Hearing none, the resolution approving tree worker license application is on page 55 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenthal.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston.
Aye.
Councilmember Grant.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye. The resolution is approved. We will move along to our next item of new business, which is adoption of a resolution approving 2023 equipment certificate purchase pool painting. And Pete is here to talk to us about that.
Madam Mayor and City Council, before you, you have a proposal to approve Paintball LLC of Albert Lee to complete the pool painting. As you are aware, we have 3 pools, or 3 pits down there that we work with. Diving pit, the regular pool, and the wading pool. And our goal would be to paint all 3 of those. We do have, in our past history, a cost of about $39,700 is what we paid back in 2018. So you can kind of see that the price has gone up a little bit. We're very comfortable with the contractor that has been selected here. We received a tip of a contractor that's doing work in southern Minnesota who'd worked for Austin, Albert Lee, and some of those areas. And so our rec director pointed us in that right direction, and we were able to save a little bit of money. As you're aware, we had $90,000 budgeted for this purchase, and we're going to be significantly under that. And with that, we would answer any questions. The goal would be to finish by May 12th so that we can open the pool at the end of May.
Wonderful. Questions for Pete? Brad?
So first question, is this not on the consent agenda because it's an equipment certificate? Or is
Yes,
it?
that's
Okay.
correct.
And then the next question is people swim in lakes and we don't paint lakes, so why are we painting the pool? Just kidding.
Can there be a renaming?
Moving on.
He always
Well-
has to say something about the pool.
Well, I know we had been hopeful that it would come in lower than budgeted, so I'm really pleased at the amount. And if there's no further discussion, we'll take a motion to approve the resolution approving the 2023 equipment certificate purchase outdoors pool sandblasting and repainting found on page 58 of the packet. Is there-
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Blumenthal.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston.
Aye.
Councilmember Grant.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
I suppose. Aye.
The resolution is approved. Moving on, adoption of a resolution approving submission of an application for grant funds to the Department of Natural Resources Outdoor Recreation Grant Program. Pete?
Madam Mayor and City Council, as we have done in the past with Minnesota Square, we have made application previously to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources for an outdoor recreation grant. This is a matching grant, and as you're aware, at Gorman Park, we are going to be undertaking significant improvements in that area. We do have about $350,000 worth of, we have $700,000 worth of eligible grant funding application that we can apply for, which we hope to get about half of that. And so with that, we kind of talk a little bit about the dates and the timelines. We've got some preliminary information here that talks about March 31st to submit the grant. June, they would announce the grants, and then we can move forward with some of the reviews and processing of the grant if we are lucky enough to get that grant. We do have some special funding. We have ARPA funding that we are using as our matching grant application for this. So cash always goes further than in-kind services. And so we're very hopeful that we can accomplish something here with DNR. The resolution on page 60 and 61 goes into a little more detail, but really what we're asking for is staff to be authorized to complete the work.
Mayor, members, if I could add one thing. This grant, again, parallel, as Pete said, with Minnesota Square Park, is slightly different than what we see with many other grant applications. This one through the DNR requires council resolution in advance or at the time of application. The vast majority of grants that we apply for and that you receive don't require approval until you are awarded the grant. So I just wanted to make that distinction for you and why this comes to you and other ones may or may not.
Thanks. Any questions or discussion? Emily?
The DNR grant for Minnesota Square, that was for trails mostly.
Correct.
Do you have an idea of how this one would be used, or is that still kind of?
There's a variety of different processes that are eligible. And so we have identified roughly $700,000 out of the $2 million project that would be eligible. And so they will look at that. What we'll do is submit a preliminary submittal. They will look at that and tell us where our best chances are, and then we can align the grant up with where their funding is. Your maintenance superintendent has done a tremendous amount of work on this already to try to make this successful, so we're really hopeful that this can go through.
Thank you, Pete, and thank your staff for your work on this. This is great.
Other questions? Brad?
So Pete, on the grant issue, I do want to say, your team is doing a great job, not just on this, but they've done a great job on the EAB grant. When the ATP grants were brought forward to them, they pulled together and within 2 weeks' time, opportunities for it. Your team definitely deserves credit for the amount of work they've put into the grant programs. Minnesota Square Park has saved us $65,000. It's are we over 200,000 on the EAB grants?
Yep.
So the city is really benefiting from Pete's team and the work they put into the grant
Yeah, the superintendents are
applications.
doing a nice job.
Yeah.
Council's put us in, Pete's team in a great position through allowing us to do the planning and the resources for planning. All of those things, when you could submit that, attached with these grant applications, makes a big difference. We're just not pulling it out of our hat. There's really a plan that's been approved by Parks Board or Council or whomever that we're working from. It makes a big difference.
Any additional questions for Pete? Seeing none, the resolution authorizing application for the 2023 Department of Natural Resources Outdoor Recreational Grant is on pages 60 and 61 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sherstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bluthwack.
Aye.
The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Last item of new business, adoption of resolutions related to proposed assessment for the 2023 Park Grove Street and Utility Improvements Project. There are two resolutions associated with this agenda item on pages 64 and 66 of the packet. Pete,
Madam
you're
Mayor
still
and City
here.
Council, first of all, the headline, the title should say 2023 Park Row South Third Assessment Project. Todd has the correct language that we'll get in the resolution. We missed the 2023. That has been the project title for this entire process as we have moved through the area here. What we're looking at tonight is to ask you to approve two resolutions to keep this project on track. The first resolution is really about declaring the cost that we want to assess and ordering preparation of the proposed assessment. We do have the bids in, and we are starting to put together the assessment costs for each of the property owners, not only based on the total project cost, but the assessment policy that you just approved. And so with that, in the first resolution, you can see there's $844,958 are the total cost that we will be working with on the project. Out of that number, $523,281 would be the responsibility of the city. The other portions, the $236,832 would be the assessed portion to the property owners. And then working with the property owners, we would have an additional $84,848 or $845 in cost on private property that we can work with individual property owners to make improvements where needed. And so with that, again, the resolution here would be modified slightly to include the changes of the previous assessment policy that you just updated. And so we'll get that language squared away. But resolution on page 64 and 65 deal with the overall cost of the projects and our intent to assess.
Thanks, Pete. Questions for Pete? Brad?
When do you expect, do you think you'll be able to get started? I'm assuming you're out for bids right now.
Yeah,
correct?
our next steps will be, we'll put the packages together, we will do a mailing, then work with property owners to let them know how their assessment looks compared to what we initially discussed with them, so that they can see the benefit. And then we'll bring that information back as we authorize, or we ask council to authorize the bids, which would be in the next probably 60 days that we would accomplish that. We'll go through a series of individual meetings with property owners along the line to make sure they're on the same page where we are.
Daryl?
Have you opened bids on it already?
Excuse
Did
me?
you open bids on it already?
Yes, we did.
Okay, how many bids did you have, or
We had two bids.
at or below? At?
They were slightly above.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Dustin?
So the next time you come back to us, you'll have the feedback from the residents.
We'll have the breakdown, yes,
Breakdown,
and
okay.
we will have communicated with them as to what their assessment would be.
And I think based on the community feedback that has been shared with council members, I think most will be fairly receptive to these changes we made.
That will be an opportunity at that next time for people to object officially under the Minnesota statute, under Minnesota Statute 429. So if they object at that time, the council should have a very clear idea about the level or the amount of objections that you then have. And so you'll know that, the plan would be
Prior.
is that you'll know that prior to the time you authorize bids. And so if you have a bunch of people that object, you could say, well, we're not doing the project. That's how it works. So it's certainly up to the council how you want to move forward. But from a staff perspective, we would agree. We believe that most folks, no one's assessment has gone up, just about everyone's has gone down, many substantially, have gone down substantially.
Additional questions or discussion on this agenda item?
The only other item that I'd point out is that, it's just to be clear on the policy modification that you made, the vast majority of this project goes to either fees or property taxes in paying for that amount, slightly over $500,000. So just to make you aware of that.
Hearing no further discussion, the resolution declaring cost to be assessed for the 2023 Park Row Streets and Utility Improvement Project and ordering preparation of proposed assessments begins on page 64 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Councilmember Bluthman?
Aye.
Councilmember Schuerster?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Any further discussion before we move on to the next resolution? The resolution on page 66 calls for a hearing on the proposed 2023 Park Row Streets and Utility Improvement Project, assessment of costs for the 2023 Parks Row Streets and Utility Improvement Project. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
If I could, just as a
Yes.
clarification, as amended, with the appropriate
So
title.
moved as amended.
Thank you.
Yep. Call the roll. Thank you.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Councilmember Bluthman?
Aye.
Councilmember Schuerster?
Aye.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Thanks
Thanks,
very
Pete.
much.
Thank you.
If I may
Thanks,
ask,
Pete.
that's part of our regular council meeting, correct? The April 10th.
April 10th hearing?
The hearing is
Yes,
part of the regular-
yes,
it's
yes,
not a
yes.
special meeting. it's
It
part
is
of
not
our-
a special meeting, part of our regular meeting.
All right, that was our last item of new business for the night. We will move on to reports, and I have the first report which is a Women's History Month proclamation. Whereas the city of St. Peter, women of the city of St. Peter, of every race, class, and ethnic background, have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our community in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, including help shape every major progressive social change and movement. Whereas women of St. Peter have played and continue to play a critical economic, cultural, and social role in every sphere of the life of the city by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside the home. And whereas women of St. Peter have played a unique role throughout the history of the city by providing a large portion of the volunteer labor force. And whereas women of St. Peter are particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our city. And whereas women of St. Peter have been leaders for the betterment of the city, I therefore, I, Shannon A. Noel, Mayor of the City of St. Peter, Minnesota, do hereby proclaim March 2023 as Women's History Month and call upon the citizens of St. Peter to participate in Women's History Month activities, including the March 28th, 2023 Women Celebrating Women event with the theme of Women Who Tell Our Stories, in witness thereof. Thank you very much. Just take a moment to say it's a great event. I hope that women who are watching participate. Emily Carey and I attended last year, and we'll be there again this year. So we'll move on to the next proclamation, which is Vietnam Veterans Day. Whereas the United States of America began military operations in the country of Vietnam on January 12, 1962, and whereas American involvement in the Vietnam War continued until the last American troops were evacuated from Vietnam on March 29, 1973, and whereas more than 58,000 American military men and women gave their lives in service to our nation during the Vietnam War, and whereas veterans of the Vietnam War deserve to be shown the respect and dignity of a grateful nation, and whereas Minnesota honors the sacrifice of these veterans and respects their dedication to the highest traditions of our armed forces, and whereas our nation stands stronger for the service of these veterans and Minnesota stands ready to honor their proud legacy with our deepest gratitude, now, therefore, I, Shannon A. Noel, Mayor of the City of St. Peter, Minnesota, do hereby proclaim March 29th, 2023 as Vietnam Veterans Day in the city, and hereby do encourage St. Peter residents to honor the sacrifices made by all veterans of the Vietnam War by attending the Vietnam Veterans Day ceremonies. And those ceremonies will be held on the 29th of March at 5 p.m. in the community center. I attended the program last year, and it was a very moving program, and so I hope that those of you who are able to will plan on attending. I will move on to my report from the League of Minnesota Cities training. I attended last month the elected leaders cohort training, which was held in Mankato. It was wonderful to be able to attend because the location is so close. And it was a really great opportunity to network with elected leaders in southern Minnesota. Got to chat to a lot of people who are really local to us and talk about what's happening in St. Peter, what's happening in their cities. So I appreciate the city's support in my attendance. It was an excellent opportunity. And just wanted to say thank you to the city for investing in all of us elected leaders as we participate in league activities and other similar activities. And the last thing, which is not on the agenda, I just wanted to take a moment to report the passing of Jerry Pfeiffer, who served on the St. Peter City Council for a whopping 28 years. And I know that that's just one of many ways that he served the city of St. Peter over his life. I served with Jerry for just 1 month on the city council when our terms overlapped. And I was really impressed with the depth of his knowledge, like the length of his time on the council, and the good humor that he approached his work with. I think anybody who met Jerry probably got a joke out of him. So just wanted to take the time to recognize Jerry and his service tonight, and to extend my sympathies and condolences to his family. So that's the last item that I'll report on today. And we'll move along to reports from the city administrator.
Mayor, members, I defer on my first one to Pete. Pete, if you wouldn't mind, members may recall that we worked jointly with Nicollet County and with the Minnesota Department of Transportation on a study related to the Highway 22 corridor. So this is the 22 corridor really from 169 on the north end of town out past County Road 20. And so there's an event going on this week, Pete, if you wouldn't mind.
There is, March 15th, which is Wednesday, from 5 to 7 in the senior center. We do have an open house that relates to improvements that we have drawn up, some scope, and we'd like to review that with the public. We also plan to discuss timelines for some of the improvements out there. I know we've received quite a few calls in the past here, few months, for potholes out on Highway 22. We'll certainly share that information with MnDOT and their staff, but the purpose here really is to look at pedestrian, bicycle, car traffic out there and ways that we can improve the safety for the citizens of St. Peter.
So just to be clear, Pete, this is, if I remember right, from 5 to 7?
5 to 7.
And so this is an open house, so it's not like there's a presentation and you gotta be there at a certain time. You can come and kind of in the standard tradition that we have in St. Peter, there'll be tables and maps laid out and you'll be able to talk with engineers and public works directors and other folks. There isn't a specific role necessarily for city council members. You're sure welcome to come and go as you please, and we'd love to have you there. But it's not like you have to be there to do a presentation. Our goal here is to solicit input from the community and give them an opportunity to talk to some of the folks that are really working on this.
Right, we are actually leading the corridor study for MnDOT on this project, along with Nicollet County, and MnDOT staff will all be at the open house.
So we'd encourage folks to attend. Next one that I have, Madam Mayor, it relates to the APPA rally, and I was not in attendance, as is my usual, but we always have a couple of council members, and Pete usually chaperones, and so we want to provide some time if you want to talk a little bit about the value of APPA, and if it was a worthwhile use of your time, and maybe a thing or two that you thought was great, or that you learned, or that you experienced as a part of that. So I defer to council members, and then Pete.
Yeah, Dustin and
Go
Ben
ahead.
attended.
I'll kick it off for us. So both council member Rampton and I were able to lead panels at the Capitol with different lawmakers. And
Which is super cool, by the way, to get the opportunity to do that. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
so we were able to lead panels, and lawmakers were able to get information directly from people who work in the power industry in Minnesota. And a couple of the things that we really wanted them to understand is we need funding to increase and support grid reliability, cleaner and renewable energy. SIMPO was already scheduled to go 80% renewable by 2030. However, with Minnesota passing the legislation to go 2040, we wanted to communicate the need for federal funding to support that. We also expressed that we wanted to see support continuing for direct payment to local utilities if we are to go solar. Historically, that direct payment was only available to citizens and for-profit businesses. Ben, any other highlights you wanted to hit on? I don't want to take all of them from us.
We talked about the supply chain issues with transformers. Everybody's having the issue nationwide, and a lot of it just comes down to core steel. You know, everybody's using core steel from the transformers and other things, one of the things being EVs. So it's important that we have the EVs to have a green future. However, we need to be able to charge the EVs, so make sure that, you know, cart horse type situation. So we talked about that. We also talked about small issue exceptions for our local banks to be able to bond for projects larger than $10 million. That figure was set back in 85, 86, and $10 million doesn't go as far as it does. It just doesn't go as far as it used to. So look to try and get that raised to 30 million. But yeah, it was very, very, very informative. We got to meet with a ton of people from all over the state of Minnesota. Met with most of the members of Congress from Minnesota or their legal or legislative aides, and both senators from Minnesota. So, and Pete kept us out of trouble.
The only other thing to add to that was cybersecurity, both asking our legislators to make sure there's support for cybersecurity and physical security of different infrastructures. You've seen people are doing different things nowadays to electrical supplies and to grids and to substations, and it's kind of a little bit of scare going on right now, but hopefully we can get through this and get some support in that area.
Madam Mayor, the only other question that I'd have was just to, from a staff perspective, we really appreciate that people can commit the time and energy to do that work. It's different when staff in Congress or in the Senate and those elected officials hear from other elected officials. So we really appreciate you take the time. We always try and find out, so was it a worthwhile use of your time? Did you feel heard? Was there opportunity? All those things.
Absolutely.
Good.
Definitely worthwhile. I don't think that there was a wasted minute spent.
Great.
Overwhelmingly, it's for the city's best interest if we're able to get representatives there. Just for example, when you look at the 2021 infrastructure bill, many of the lawmakers were able to hear that municipalities back in Minnesota haven't been able to get grants. And for our representatives to be able to hear, like, look, we know you passed this and you put this in place to make the infrastructure available. However, your people that you're representing have not been able to get their projects through based on it. It's a good way for us to connect to our lawmakers.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for taking the time to go, and thanks for Pete for keeping you out of trouble. He has one job out there, and so that was accomplished, so we appreciate that very much,
Appreciate
Pete.
that, Pete.
Madam Mayor, the last item that I have is I just want to mention to all of you that the League of Minnesota Cities Conference is coming up in Duluth, June 21st and 23rd. A couple of you have contacted me about that, so that's fantastic, but we certainly provide resources. You budget money to be able to participate in these education opportunities, so if you're interested, now's a great time to think about communicating with Barb or I, or getting a room, or doing whatever. So this is in the latest Cities magazine, but if you have questions, certainly feel free to give us a call, or League of Minnesota Cities website has some great information about that as well. So just wanted to mention that to you. Great educational opportunity as always. Madam Mayor, that's all I have for you for tonight.
Well, I kind of jumped right over council member reports, so is there anything that any council member would like to report on?
Remember, the St. Patrick's Day Parade is on Friday.
It is.
Is everybody there?
Yeah.
I won't be there. Be in Duluth.
Oh, well, I'll be at the St. Peter Patrick's Day Parade. Last year was absolutely a delight. I expect this one will be the same, and so hope to see members of the public there.
Well, last year we had an HPC meeting at the same time.
Oh.
Be there this year.
All right, well, hearing nothing further, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.